So a week ago Friday, I got back from a trip to Poland with Father Witold. And there were a number of memorable things that we saw and incidents. And so I can't say there's a highlight, because if this is a highlight, that's a highlight, that's a highlight, then the word highlight doesn't mean anything. But I'll start with, the tour company put together, they have a standard itinerary where you're going to go if you visit Poland. So Father Witold modified it some. So one of the things he modified was we went to his hometown. And we got to meet his mother and his dad and his brother. Now, of course, they only speak Polish, and I don't speak any Polish. So it's like we couldn't really talk. But his mother was delighted to see us, that we were there visiting. And, of course, many of us have heard many stories about Father Witold's mother. So it's like, he always had something humorous to say, and it's like Mom corrected me, or I corrected Mom, or whatever it was. It's like, great. So we did see that. But because he modified that trip, we also went to the city of Lehon. And in Lehon, there is a new church, relatively new. And it's probably, I think he said it was the largest church in Poland. Now, from 1939 to 1989, Poland was oppressed. Couldn't build any churches. So this church was started in 1994. It was finished in 2004. A beautiful structure. And if you've ever been to Washington, D.C. and seen the Shrine of the Immaculate Conception, it's roughly on a par with that. That's kind of size. But this church in Poland, they raised the money and built it in 10 years. In Washington, D.C., that church was 70 to 80 years under construction and fundraising and so on. So kind of a different world. Now, another aspect of being in Poland, and interestingly, relative to this, I had a conversation after Candlelight Mass on Thursday night with a young lady who's going to School of Mines, working on her PhD in material science, but she's from Poland. And she's been here for 2 years, so she's got around and visited some places. And I said to her, one of my impressions was if we were to take all of the denominational churches, Catholic Church is not a denomination, and the non-denomination and whatever they are, and make them Catholic churches, you would be close to the density of Catholic churches that there are in Poland. So if you were to convert all of them, you'd be close to it, because there were many places where there were many churches close together. Classic example in the city of Warsaw, the capital, there's the cathedral, St. John the Baptist, and a little alley, and then the church dedicated to Our Lady of Grace, who is the patroness of the city. So the churches, two churches immediately next to each other, and that was not unusual to see similar things in other places. I think Krakow and the Old Town, a similar situation, and a couple other places. Another aspect of that was we saw, here's daily Mass, a list of daily Mass times, every hour, throughout the morning, on a daily Mass. So we actually went to Mass in Krakow at St. Florian. That was the second church that Father Karol Wojtyla was assigned to. We know him as Pope St. John Paul II. Father Witold concelebrated with a Polish priest who was assigned there, and he told us afterwards that there are 10 priests at that parish. It's like, wow. It's like we have trouble I have trouble wrapping my head around that. Most of my life, if there was one priest truly available, that'd be a lot. So it's like they have still a robust faith. And part of that is just the oppression that they were under from 1939 to 1989. Most of that, the Soviets, who, part of their whole world mission or, view of life is, we can't have religion, we need to stamp it out. So the Polish people were lucky that they had Cardinal Wyszynski, and I think he was made a cardinal in the late 40s, 48 or something like that, and he pushed back. He pushed back against the Soviets. So first you have the Soviets, who are just like what we hear in the first reading today from Wisdom. The wicked oppress the people and try and destroy their faith. So that's a little bit of what we hear, and that's what was going on with the Soviets. And now we have Cardinal Wyszynski is kind of somewhat like that second reading we hear from James, where I'm going to be merciful and gentle and kind. We don't hear it in this reading, but he was firm, and he pushed back and protected the faith so that the church in Poland was saved, and it was relatively healthy, so that when they get to freedom in 1989 or so, they can build churches again. So tremendous burst of faith, 35 years ago, evidenced by the number of new churches and churches that were remodeled or refurbished so that you could see it. One of the places we stopped was the church where Helen Kowalska, we know as St. Faustina, was baptized. And they had put a massive addition onto that church. And actually, the day we were there was the first wedding in that new massive addition. So they're still building churches, and the faith is very healthy there. So they know what that oppression is like. But one of the things we hear is that where evil abounds, grace abounds more. And they had that grace through those years so that they could suffer under what we hear from that reading and wisdom about the wicked, but they could also come back, as we hear from James, with mercy and love and compassion. So all those things come together. So a number of other sites we visited, particularly focused on the three saints of the last 100 years. So the first one would be St. Faustina. So we did see where she was born, baptized, the convent that she had lived in, died at. St. Maximilian Kolbe, the monastery that he founded, and also the cell at Auschwitz where he died. And the birthplace of Karol Wojtyła, the St. John Paul II, and a few other places where he visited and spent time. So very much enlightening. There's just three of the many, many saints that Poland has. Those are three of the last 100 years. And I saw an article just in the last week that there might be another one who died in one of the concentration camps in Germany. So that might be coming up also. So a number of saints from Poland, witnessing to the faith, standing up for the faith. So there's my trip to Poland, and some of that, and if you come down for coffee and donuts later, I have a beautiful picture of a monstrance to show you, so ask me about it. Gospel today. Jesus tells his disciples, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to be killed, and then I'll rise again. They can't figure out what he's talking about. They just can't wrap their head around that. Well, of course, we know the rest of the story, so good, we're in luck. We can understand this. But they just don't get it. And because they can't get it, they're talking about something else. What are they talking about? Who's the greatest? And then Jesus flips that whole concept over on them. And when I read that, it reminded me of a country song by Kenny Rogers called The Greatest. So you have a little boy with his bat and ball, and he's out playing, and he throws the ball up, and he swings, and he misses. The ball falls to the ground, strike one. So he's still saying, I'm the greatest, I'm the greatest. And he throws the ball up again, and he swings again, and he misses. Strike two. He says, I'm the greatest there ever was. And he throws the ball up again, and he swings with all his might, and he misses again. Strike three. And he's still there. I'm the greatest there's ever been. But even I didn't know I could pitch like that. So totally reframes how we think. Of course, we're going to think, throw the ball up. I'm going to hit the ball. It's going to go somewhere. But he's like, pitching, and I struck out. I struck the batter out. It's like totally flipped on its head how we would think. And that's what Jesus does for his disciples, and he's also telling that to us. He's saying, not only Were you baptized? And you need to evangelize, but here's how you need to do it. You need to be the least, the last, the servant of all. So he's calling us to be servants. He's calling us to change, reframe how we're thinking, reframe maybe how we're living. Maybe we only need some minor adjustments. But some of the things to think about is, what's the music I listen to? A lot of the music from our culture today is pretty ugly. Or television, movies, same thing. Even there's things that, available to read that are horrible. There's also, the good news is, we have a tremendous amount of material through our faith. You can go to Formed and other places like that, where you can see videos of saints, you can read, hear podcasts that enlighten us and help us to frame our life as Jesus calls us to frame it. So we want to think about, how am I doing that? And if somebody checked up on me, would they see any difference in my life because I'm a Christian? Or would I look like just about anybody else on my street? So we want to think about those, and how do I reframe my life or make those adjustments so that we accept Jesus, who gives us himself, who dies on the cross for us, rises from the dead, and gives us himself in the Eucharist. His body, blood, soul, and divinity, his real presence. So as you receive his real presence today, ask him to help you to make those adjustments, that reframing that might be necessary in your life, so that you can be the last, the least, and the servant of all.